Too often, all the American people see of Congress is hyper-partisan bickering on cable TV. What they don't see when the cameras are turned off, many of us are friends. The policy disputes, they aren't personal, even when passionate. That's the beginning of a piece that our next two guests put together. Representative Charlie Crist is a Democrat from Florida. Mike Johnson is a Republican from Louisiana. We thought, well, this would be a good chance to examine something called civility. Have you ever heard of that word? Yeah, I know. It's been a rare one. Let's bring him onto the program. Congressman Crist, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tim. Great to be with you and Mike.
And Congressman Johnson, thank you for being on the program today.
Thank you as well, and thanks for putting attention on what we believe is a really important issue.
Yeah, clearly it seems to be. Congressman Johnson, how did you get to know Charlie Crist?
I had known of the governor for many years, as most Americans had. He's a great guy from the great state of Florida, and we're both Southerners. And we met, I think, in person for the first time at our freshman retreat right after we all took our oaths of office in January. The weekend after that oath, they put us all on an Amtrak train and sent us to Colonial Williamsburg. And that event was really the genesis for the whole commitment to civility and everything we're doing right now, because 55 freshman members of the Congress got together, and we all shared our own views in a closed session just among us, that we wanted to do it differently, change the tone in Washington and raise the level of civility. And it's been very gratifying to work with a group of people who share that ideal.
Yeah, and you call him governor, and I'm not sure, Governor Crist, is this did you get a promotion or a demotion when you became a member of Congress?
I think an extension. I'm an addicted public servant, obviously, having served as Attorney General and Governor of Florida. And I'm just grateful to the people of St. Petersburg and Clearwater for sending me to Congress. And, Mike, no one could say it better than he just did about how important this issue is. And, one of the things that I saw during my campaign last fall was, certainly discussion about senior issues, veterans, environment, the economy, all the usual things. But every person would say to me, Charlie, if you win, you need to work together. You need to respect each other. We need to get to a better tone in Congress for the sake of the country and realize that we're the United States and we should not be divided states. And we're all Americans before we're partisans. And so it's important to, have a level of civility that Mike really led us on. And I want to thank him for that. He actually penned a document called the Commitment to Civility and distributed it to our freshman class, almost unanimously signed by all 55. And when you take that kind of action and you take that kind of commitment and you bring it to the United States Congress, I was proud to be one of the original signers of it. And I think that's exactly what the people of America need to know and hear, especially today. I mean, we hear so much distraction from different parts of the federal government, but at least in this freshman class in the U.S. House, we are committed to civility and trying to treat each other well.
Congressman Johnson, since you wrote it, one of the things that people will naturally look at and say, well, this is a reaction to Donald Trump. How would you respond to that?
No, not at all. I mean, it genuinely did come out of this discussion that we had amongst the freshman class on the third day of our retreat before we got on the train to come back to Washington from Colonial Williamsburg. We were seated in a U-shaped table setting in a big conference room. And everyone just went around and individually, we just kind of went down the table and everybody shared their heart about what they anticipated for the 115th Congress. And it just struck me that virtually every single person said in their own words, they articulated in their own way, that they were really disillusioned by the tone of the politics. We acknowledge that America remains the most free, most powerful, most prosperous nation in all the world, and yet we have all these challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is this increasing division and coarsening of the culture that I think, and many of us feel, has been fueled too often by the vitriol in our politics and our public discourse. So the result of that has been a loss of trust in our institutions, our elected officials, and so we made the point, and we made speeches on the floor February 14th when we publicly released the commitment to civility with 50 out of 55 freshmen signing on to that sort of a contract we made with one another to act with proper respect and model civility in our public and private actions and encourage productive dialogue. We made the point this was not directed at any one person, not at any party, not at any group. This is a commitment that we've made individually to control our own actions, which at the end of the day is all that we can be responsible for. And we think that's a good model for the next generation.
That's Representative Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, also with Representative Charlie Crist, a Democrat from Florida. We're talking about civility, practicing the golden rule. It's an important point to make. And Congressman Crist, I wanted to bring this up because, you were familiar with the embrace of President Obama. That actually hurt your chances to become elected senator. Chris Christie in New Jersey, when he had embraced President Obama, found that hurt his choices. That's not even incivility that is getting people into trouble, or the way that people looked at it. But this goes far beyond just politics, right? I mean, according to the study that you're quoting in here, that civility has reached crisis levels. We've got intimidation, threats, harassment, cyberbullying, discrimination, violence. That's aside from politics. This seems to be more than just anger at politicians.
I don't think there's any question about that, Tim. We see that throughout society, but I think, there's such a level of focus, especially today, on what's happening in government and, following the health care bills and different pieces of legislation. And, of course, the recent last month horrific incident at the baseball practice with Steve Scalise being shot. And so when you see that happening and unfolding right before you in the nation's capital, obviously the media is covering it significantly. And so that brings a greater focus to how this is impacting America's politics. And I would agree with what Mike said earlier. This has nothing to do with any particular individual, or certainly nothing to do with either party. It has to do with the state of affairs in America right now. And the frustration that I heard, and I'm sure that Mike did in Louisiana during the course of our campaigns, that, we're tired of the bickering, we're tired of the arguing, the vitriol that's in our political discourse. We need to have a better tone, a better way, and reach to the better angels in all of us. And I think that's exactly what Michael has done by, putting pen to paper and making this commitment that all of us had the opportunity to sign. Another thing that I did recently, I believe in the golden rule, which is simple, and it simply means that you do unto others as you would have done unto you, as it says in the Bible, in Matthew 7:12. And so sponsored a piece of legislation that would say that we would have that commitment and that recognition, that the golden rule is something that we need to try to practice each and every day. This stuff is not that complicated. And certainly we're not all going to agree on every issue, or maybe many issues, but that's, not the point. The point is that we all are Americans, and we need to get back to the realization that in order for this great nation that we are blessed to live in, we need to pull together and work together in order to, bring about a better life for all of our citizens, a better education for our children, a better economy for, middle-class families, the kinds of things that all of us want. We may have different ideas about how to get there, but we all want to go to the same place.
Well, let's talk about this. I mean, obviously, people are going to wonder about specifics. Clearly, these are goals that I think most everyone would agree with. On the other hand, I know you distributed wristbands that said practice the golden rule every day. And I don't want to belittle that, but on the other hand, wristband sounds like it may be a little lacking in terms of its ability to turn things around. Or is that just a start? Is it important symbolism? How do you look at that?
Look, there's an old expression that the longest journey begins with one step, and I really don't feel that any act is too small. There have been many acts in the course of U.S. history and world history where a single act may have made a difference in somebody's life, and just how we comport ourselves in Congress. Really a point that Mike brought to the fore for all of us, Representative Johnson, is an important one. How you treat one another, others will witness that, and they will see that. If you open the door for somebody else, if you, delay your speaking so that someone else can speak before you, simple human courtesy, if you will, and it can be infectious, Tim. There's no question about it, and I think that those little steps, baby steps, if you will, can make a big difference over a period of time.
Congressman Johnson, it seems to me that's even more difficult these days because the power of the party is on the fringes. The far right, the far left, in some ways are driving a lot of the dialogue for both parties. And I wonder, how do you maintain civility in the face of that kind of partisanship?
That's the real challenge. But, this commitment document that everyone signed, and there is something magical about having a signature on a document. It makes it almost like a contract that we've made with one another. And by the way, the commitment to civility started as a freshman class project, but now it's spread to the whole Congress, and we'll have more than a couple hundred signatures or more by the end of this week, bipartisan across the whole House. But
always great when you get the juniors and seniors to chime in too. It always
that's
helps
right.
the freshmen
That's
when
right.
they do it.
They've now taken it on because they, in the wake of the shootings and all the rest. I mean, civility's become a big topic again, and we're grateful for that. But look, the point is that, look, we believe that a leader can be cooperative, conciliatory, without compromising his or her core principles. And so it really doesn't matter where we are on the political spectrum. I mean, I'm one of the most conservative members of the Congress. But the goal here is that even when we disagree, we do it in an agreeable manner. We try to return to the model of statesmanship that the previous great generations of Americans, exhibited and revered. And, I think of, one of my political heroes is Ronald Reagan, right? But he and Tip O'Neill famously had this great bond of friendship. Even though they disagreed on almost every matter of public policy, they still treated one another with respect. And the reason I think Reagan was so successful is that he was a winsome witness to his principles. And all of us can do that.
Are we missing a commonality of goals, Congressman Crist? I mean, is this something where, in wartime we're usually united, and in times of stress, great stress, usually we're united, but I wonder if there is a common cause that is somehow lacking here.
I don't think there is a common cause lacking. I think that, probably one of the least controversial measures that we can take up in the Congress would be infrastructure. Who's not against who's against improving our roads and our rails and our seaports and our airports? I doubt that anybody's against that. And so that comes to mind. But I wanted to cite one example that happened today, Tim. It's in my Financial Services Committee. There was a bill brought forward, sponsored by a Republican and a Democrat, Representative Sinema from Arizona, the Democrat, Representative Hollingsworth from Indiana, the Republican. And I hadn't seen that in this committee since I've been here for about 6 months now. And the two of them brought forward this piece of legislation that, very simply put, would free up capital for small businesses that are trying to be either startups or to expand their business. And the way that it was spoken about, I think, moved the entire committee. It's a committee of about 50 or so. And, the tone was different. The mutual respect was different. The admiration for one another was different. And it took me by surprise. And I couldn't help but wonder in my own mind if what Representative Michael Johnson had started in some small way may have helped lead to what happened today in our Financial Services Committee. But, I think that it probably had some effect, but it was something I had not seen before act out on a policy issue, but it sure was refreshing.
We will look forward to seeing more examples, I guess, if the truth be told. Congressman Charlie Crist and Congressman Mike Johnson, thank you both for joining us here on POTUS today.
Great to be with you, Tim.
Thank you. Good deal. Governor Crist, Congressman Crist represents district in Florida. Mike Johnson is Representative Charlie Crist from the 13th District in Florida. Mike Johnson, representative from Louisiana. He serves the 4th District in Louisiana. The Twitter handles @Rep Charlie Crist, Crist, and @Rep Mike Johnson.